The Thrift Savings Plan G Fund had the highest percent gain last year. Does this mean that all federal employees should run out and put everything in the G Fund? Absolutely not. But there are reasons why you should be invested in the G Fund. In this episode, we're going to compare the G Fund's return over the last 15 years to the other core funds in the TSP, and we're also going to give suggestions of when you should invest or not in the G Fund. Welcome. I'm Ed Smith, President of Valor Wealth Partners, where we're dedicated to educating federal employees on your complex and often underutilized benefits. In today's episode, we want to be talking about the G Fund and its great performance last year compared to the other TSP funds. We also want to be looking at when you should and shouldn't be using the G Fund. The reason why we decided to do this video was talking with clients and other people. They were talking about how they should be putting more money into the G Fund just because of the performance. Well, that's not the reason why you should be looking at the G Fund. Historical performance does not mean that it's going to do better in one year or the following year. So we really want to be able to look at this. Let's take a look at some different charts so you can be able to see what we mean by this so we can actually compare the true numbers. Okay, in this chart, what we're looking at is the highs and lows on a graphical representation. Don't worry so much about the numbers below because we are going to bring up another chart that shows this in a little bit better representation. But what we want to be able to do is just showing you that in some years, all of the funds do very well, and some years they all do bad, or they're mediocre. And some people like looking at the data this way. And obviously, it might be easier to print this off with the numbers there. When we move on and we actually look at the individual funds in a different way, we can see how volatile they actually are. Now, if we're looking at this report right here, or this chart right here, we're looking at the C, S, and I that are highlighted. And what we're seeing is that they go up and down a lot. When I'm looking at them, I compare the investing in the TSP to going to an amusement park. And these three funds, the C, S, and I, would be like going on a roller coaster. Sometimes you're getting really cheerful, and other times you're screaming because it's going down. Not for everybody, but for some people that can handle the ride, this could be really good investments. We're looking at these. When we move on to the F fund, highlighted here, now what we're looking at is more like the flume ride. And I don't know if you've ever been on a flume with a water ride and you're in a fake log going down the thing. It's a more even road. You will have some ups and downs, and sometimes you will get splashed and get a little bit wet. But for the most part, it's not too volatile. Definitely not like those other funds that we just looked at. In the third area, this is the G fund. And this is more like a merry-go-round. You're not going to get up and down except for when the horse is going up and down a little bit. But for the most part, it's a pretty even keel ride. And so whatever ride is best for you or whatever ride you can handle, that's what we want to be on. Now, if the first ones, the CS and I, make you sick, you really should not be on those rides. You want to be looking at more the F or the G. And so let's look at the G fund a little bit more to really see what does this mean as far as the numbers and where are the winners and losers over different years. Okay, when we look at the last 15 years, what we're seeing here is that the G fund is the worst performing fund on a year-by-year basis. Okay, it had 7 times that it actually was the worst performing fund. It only had 3 times when it was the best performing fund. And the best performing years were followed by 2 consecutive years of being the worst performer. That's not a good track record. Now, you can say, well, look at the C fund. The C fund has the best performing because it never had a negative year that it was the worst fund. Yes, but remember, going back to that roller coaster ride, that might not be appropriate for you. So you have to be able to look at a diverse portfolio for most people. Now, again, you have to be able to handle the volatility. And the G fund definitely takes a lot of that out of it, but you also have to be prepared for periods of time that they just aren't doing that well. And so this is a really good way to be able to look at the winners and the losers on a year-by-year basis to see what you should be in and how you should be looking at diversity. Now, when we look at the diversity of the portfolios, we really want to be able to make sure that it has a good mix. And we'll talk about these in different areas, and we've done other videos on asset allocation. Okay, but with this G fund, it could be extremely appropriate if you're having a large purchase in the near future and it's not already in your bank accounts. Again, your bank account should be where you keep short-term money. But maybe you're looking at buying a house or paying down some debt or helping out with college education, and you know you need to take it from the TSP because it's the only place you have it. It could be appropriate to have it in the G fund there. But for most people, The TSP is a long-term vehicle that needs you to get you from the point of retirement or savings to the retirement through all of the years in your life. That long-term investment is normally not appropriate for the G fund because there's other investments that can get you a better rate of return. Now, again, we have to go back to volatility. You have to make sure that you're comfortable with this. And it's okay to be in the G fund, even though you have many years to take money out, if you just can't handle that volatility. And so that's something that you have to really be able to look at. You just have to know that you're probably not keeping up with inflation. You're almost definitely not keeping up with inflation and taxes. And so that you're probably going to be losing purchasing power along the way. We have a whole video on this. It's a lot longer. We try to keep this one a little bit shorter this time, but you can take a look at this video if you want to learn a little bit more about the ins and the outs of the G fund. It's about a year old, but it's still got a lot of great content in there to really get a little bit deeper dive on just specifically the G fund. The only time that it might be able to be appropriate for the G fund would be right now, if you're just really concerned about where the markets are going. And we do not know. And anybody out there that tells you that they know, they don't. Nobody knows where the market's going. We have a lot of uncertainty right now, so maybe you pull to a safe level in the G fund and you move more money over there. I'm not saying move 100%. Maybe a portion of it that could get you through the next couple years or even 5 to 10 years of income if you need to, and you want that to be a little bit more stable. But for the most part, it's really only a comfort level. The markets could take off tomorrow and do really good, or they could crumble, and then you would have a lot of losses where the G fund would get a shine like it did last year. But for the most part, you want to have a balanced portfolio. So the G fund is part of that, but I wouldn't say you want to be all in, and definitely not all in just because it performed well last year. Because as we've seen in the past, the last 2 times it was the best performing, it was the worst performing the next 2 years. We'll see what happens this year and going forward. We always want to make sure that you're getting the best information, and we're looking at the information. So please, if this was helpful for you, put some comments in there. We try to get this one a little bit shorter so we can get some information. If you like the shorter format, please let us know. We'll try to do more of these, but we also want to have longer formats that give a little bit deeper dive when we're having a more in-depth conversation. We want the best for you and your family, so please get conflict-free, unbiased advice. Thank you for your time today, and we look forward to helping you in the next video.